The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here he is, Brandon.
Greetings, everyone. Halloween is upon us tomorrow, and I thought in celebration of such and the Out Now with Aaron and A Day of the Dead commentary releasing on Halloween, I thought I'd do a video of something that's been on my mind for a little while, and I thought I'd share with you. Now, everybody talks about the ridiculous timeline Halloween universe thing that's going on, which I was on to quite early on from the earliest days, calling it the Choose Your Own Adventure franchise. You can ask Scott Mendelson about that. It's one of the first things we talked about when we met each other back in the day. But the people have done plenty of analysis, including myself and Scott, about the idea of how those movies work, even before the David Gordon Green ones. Now, there's also trying to figure out how years work in the Friday the 13th franchise. People have done exquisite work on figuring that out. And then there's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which... yeah, that's a thing in and of itself. I don't want to touch it. But in this video I'm calling Timeline of the Dead, the crazy ways to watch George A. Romero's zombie movies, this is one I've thought about for a long time and how crazy it is. And when I sat down to put this list together, it got even crazier than I thought, but it's fascinating to me how many different ways you could legitimately watch a series through, starting with either Night or Dawn of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. And I thought, craziness came, there's just a little craziness, but, there's this whole way that people not in the United States could have experienced this series in such an illegitimate way, but thought it was legit. Maybe that's just nutty to me. But what I'd like to do is bring forward some ways to watch these movies, or that could have been watched and experienced, with my own personal history and anecdotes on it. Please, if you have extra ones, please below in the comments, let me know them. I'm curious. I'm all about more, but I do have some stipulations on my rules for this, which the biggest rule of this one, it has to start with a Romero film. So we're going to get into some discussions where Lucio Fulci's Zombie 2, Zombie Flesh Eaters come into play, and that it cannot start with that one. So that's out of the question. It has to start with a Romero film. Also, only one remake in this discussion is going to be involved. Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead is not here. Whatever the Steve Miner Day of the Dead is, love you, Jeffrey Reddick, that's not here either. And the TV series. So you have to start with Romero. Now, I say the crazy way to watch Romero's zombie films. Obviously, plenty of these are not going to include George A. Romero, but it has to start with George A. Romero's one of his films. That's the stipulation of this wandering journey through zombies. So I'm going to start with the easiest one of all in doing this list. This is it's directed by George A. Romero and is a zombie film. So we are including in this one the 1968 Night of the Living Dead, 1978's Dawn of the Dead, 1985's Day of the Dead, 2005's Land of the Dead, 2007's Diary of the Dead, and 2010's Survival of the Dead. So I know story-wise, some of this is not working out, but these are the films that have zombies and are directed by George A. Romero. So that's kind of the easiest way to go about this. There is also the next one I have is one George A. Romero zombie film to represent each decade. Now, I like this is then the theory that George would pop up once a decade, make a zombie film that updates, affects film and social commentary every decade. And one of these films probably will be questioned, but hear me out. This one starts with 1968's Night of the Living Dead, 1978's Dawn of the Dead, 1985's Day of the Dead. The controversial pick here is 1990's Night of the Living Dead, written and produced by George A. Romero, directed by Tom Savini. Now, I never thought of it in this light, but Aaron Newirth, Out Now with Aaron and Abe, and Two Black Guys Talk Godzilla, now an award-winning podcast, brought up that, hey, there was no George A. Romero zombie movie in the 90s, so this is the closest thing we have, and it kind of feels that way with it. And I agree. So I'm going to count it as the contribution for the 1990s. This is a fascinating and I think largely underappreciated film in its own right. Once people actually get to see it, they're like, oh, that was good. I like what they did with it. And it plays on expectations from the original. It's very similar and different, and I've long been a fan of this and the zombie stuff, and it's terrific. That is followed, of course, by Land of the Dead in 2005 and Survival of the Dead in 2010. I have held the belief that Survival, in terms of zombie escalation and a new story of surviving humanity, be it the island here, can fit with the other ones and not include. I know there is a crossover with characters from Diary of the Dead, but if you don't watch Diary of the Dead, you wouldn't know that, and it wouldn't matter. So you can fudge it, although, hey, whatever's clever. Now we have the next one is the Romero quadrilogy of zombie films, which include the original Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and Land of the Dead. This is the continued story of the zombie films that start with night, progress through dawn, day, and land. Now, some people may say, well, no, which original's a trilogy? I don't subscribe to that notion. We'll get to that as an option down in a sec, because Land of the Dead largely contains ideas and stuff from Day of the Dead, is what Larry wanted to do, and he himself considers it a follow-up. This will be a quintology within probably the next year or two, as they just wrapped on shooting Twilight of the Dead based on the treatment George A. Romero had before he died, which was meant to cap off this adventure of zombies. And it stars Mia Jovovich, directed by Brad Anderson, and George Romero's widow has produced it. And I think they believe they got something close to what he would have liked, so I'm eager to see it. But that, sort of similar to Phantasm, the finale is not going to be completed by the creator. But who knows? Maybe we'll get something in the spirit and a nice tribute. I look forward to it. But for now, we have a quadrilogy, and this is probably the most slick, condensed way to go with this. So we also have George's new timeline. This is another way to watch. Simply two films. We have Diary of the Dead, and we have Survival of the Dead. So there's a link between them. It's the only carrying over characters we've had, and you can put those two together. Now, for those of you I was talking about before, we have another one. We have the George did two separate trilogies people, which I have seen this online. I do not subscribe to it, but I'm going to acknowledge it for you folks. This is simply by going with the original Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead as its own trilogy. And then for some reason, subscribing that Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, and Survival of the Dead are their own trilogy, yet Land starts this astronomical progression into the zombie apocalypse, and then we go back to see how it happened with Diary, and then scale it back for Survival. I don't think they work that way, but I've seen people who believe that way, so I'm going to put it there, okay? Now, I have this other. This is a silly one, and I acknowledge it's silly, but hear me out. This is the Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter Red Dragon timeline to watch it through. So this way, you can watch Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and then go to the 1990 Night of the Living Dead remake, because I see people saying like the distance in time between Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead feels like they could be two separate films and stuff like that, but I subscribe that Dawn of the Dead 1978 looks at 1968's in sort of that revisionist Evil Dead 2 or Army of Darkness type of way, where it happened, but maybe it happened differently, more closer type thing. Like they work. Like I consider them 1 and 2, but I get it. But so that, you using the 1991 as it is like, oh, well, we want it in color with more up-to-date zombies that fit the other two and, make it neat like that. So that is my Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter Red Dragon way of watching these Romero zombie movies that I can subscribe to if people want to. I think it's a silly way. I add it. And then you go to Land of the Dead, which is no Hannibal Rising, I guess. So it kind of defeats it, but maybe you just don't. And you say, well, that's our last hurrah there with, 78, 85, and 90. Just this little way to go. That's my silly little one. Now we get in some new crazy stuff. We have the John A. Russo timeline number 1, which is the word living comes in. So maybe this is the living timeline. So in this timeline, we have John A. Russo, who's got rights to the original Night of the Living Dead as much as Romero did to do his own stuff with it, which better or worse degrees happens. But let's look at what he does. So in this route of watching films, you go from Night of the Living Dead, the original. Then you follow it up with Return of the Living Dead from 1985, Return of the Living Dead 2 from 1988, Return of the Living Dead 3 from 1993, Return of the Living Dead Necropolis from 2005, and then Return of the Living Dead Rave to the Grave, also from 2005. The latter two were both television movies. The third one was straight to video. So Return of the Living Dead comes from John A. Russo, and this is his follow-up to Night of the Living Dead. And it says in this one, it says the events were real, but the movie was the movie, which I can subscribe to in a sequel. We've seen that happen many times with things. So it's it is maybe neither first nor last at doing that. But when I was growing up in the 80s and stuff, and I was learning horror between like the late 80s, early 90s, we did not have IMDb, we did not have Wikipedia. Getting old issues of magazines were crazy, and the magazines were all like old all the time. So on one of my birthdays, I was like, maybe I was 8 or something like that. Like I knew there was Night of the Living Dead, and I knew there was the Night of the Living Dead remake. My uncle bought me the VHS for Return of the Living Dead, and I thought that was the sequel to Night of the Living Dead. I was like, oh, yeah. It wasn't until a couple of years later at like a friend's party that someone showed me Dawn of the Dead. It's like, no, this is the real deal. And I was like, holy crap, what? So I had subscribed early on to Return of the Living Dead being the sequel to Night of the Living Dead. And if anything, Return of the Living Dead should never be discounted. That thing was just as pivotal and a breakthrough as the original Night of the Living Dead was. I mean, we get so much stuff that we consider knowing about zombies from that movie, like brains and all that stuff. Like, and send more cops. That's the funniest stuff. And that movie was punk rock. It spoke to youth. Like, it's an energetic movie. I can see why that movie demolished Day of the Dead when it came to box office returns and popularity and awareness. So yeah, that one sparked a sequel that I think I found watchable, if it's not been controversial. A third film that I think is quite unique in the zombie genre, and I think it's haunting, and I really have enjoyed it all these years. That third one, for a kid who liked zombies in the 90s, was like the biggest release of that decade. that happened. It's so crazy. We look up on that. So that is John A. Russo's timeline number 1, which definitely counts. I think it's legit. So now we get to John A. Russo's timeline number 2. Not as cool here. This one we're going to start in 1999. You're like, Brandon, what's going on? In 1999, for the 30th anniversary of Night of the Living Dead, there was a 30th anniversary edition. I know a colorization happened then, but they also, for an Anchor Bay DVD VHS release, they went out and shot 15 to 17 minutes of new material from Night of the Living Dead and cut upward 10-12 minutes from the original. And what they added to it was a prequel. Bill Heintzman came, and I think he did cinematography, and he reprised his role as the original zombie in the cemetery. We get a whole backstory about 2 guys taking his casket to go bury it, and some controversy on why he wasn't incinerated or something like that. And we find out he was a child rapist, kidnapper, murderer, because that makes his zombie more scary. I don't think it matters what he had for breakfast. It's it's bad. You get some acting choices. You get a lot of unnecessary stuff. You get with this one, you also get some inserts of more gore and zombie just eating and things, and then the great ending to Night of the Living Dead is just wiped away as they continue on with this priest character who gets bit in a cemetery, and we see the Heinzman zombie, how he dies, and then we have an epilogue in a hospital, and this isn't good. It's controversial for right reasons. But so with that in mind, we start here with the anniversary edition of Night of the Living Dead. Then we go to 2001, Children of the Living Dead, a movie I was hyped for because Fangoria was talking about it and stuff, and I was like, oh, we're getting a new Romero zombie movie. It's going to be a sequel to it. It stars Tom Savini. Oh, it's awful, guys. Oh, I love Tom Savini jumping around doing action like anyone else, but he's gone in the first 10-15 minutes of this movie. It's bad. And the connecting thing is a diner, Beekman's Diner here. This is just, it's insulting to watch. It's not good. There's nobody really in it. There's this king zombie. There's a teen story. It is bad, folks. This is really, this is not good. But this is the John A. Russo timeline number 2. The 30th anniversary of Night of the Living Dead. And then Children of the Living Dead, which we should move on from fast. Because I actually own Children of the Living Dead. Not on purpose. It was part of I was picking up stupid random DVD, 9 horror movies for $5 collections. And it's on one of them. So I have it. I do not have the 30th anniversary of Night of the Living Dead, and it was always a wonder to me what that was, and I finally saw it. I was like, oof, wow. So that's a lot of timelines, right? We're not done. We're not done at all. Oh, this is fun, right, folks? Have you ever thought of these? Okay, so now I have one called the Heintzman Zombie Saga. This one, you begin with Night of the Living Dead from 1968, and then you follow it up with Flesh Eater, Revenge of the Living Dead from 1988. So in 1988, in Pittsburgh, Bill Heintzman, the guy who played the zombie in Night of the Living Dead, the original, he ended up starting to be a cinematographer for George A. Romero. He shot The Crazies and became a filmmaker in his own right. He made a movie based around his zombie from the original. He was very into that character. He was upset. I met Bill Heintzman, was it 2010 maybe? I think I went to a convention and I talked to him for an hour. My sister and I were like, oh my gosh, wow, nice man. He talked to me about Flesh Eater. And I can't find this anywhere else, but he legitimately told me that Flesh Eater was his sequel to Night of the Living Dead, following his zombie from beyond that. I don't know how, because his character burned, but we just have to go with it. Maybe he didn't catch fire. Who knows? But he said this was a fault, and he's dressed just like his character. I don't think he could get. I think of all the people in Night of the Living Dead, he couldn't get the rights to it. But this movie is just characters enter, get attacked, leave. There's some nice low-budget gore to it, but all the characters stink. All the setup stinks. I think it thinks it's edgy because it kills kids in this movie. Fine, but it's low rent. It's a curiosity itch. I think you could watch it. It's better than Children of the Living Dead for sure, and some of the others we talk about here, but it's a curiosity itch. I believe Vinegar Syndrome put it out on 4K. Check it out. Like Bill Heinzman, this film just doesn't really do it for me. We also have now the next way to watch is the Heinzman Saga Redux. So this one is kind of screwy here, but they kind of hear me out with how they fit. So I start with Night of the Living Dead, the 30th anniversary edition. Then we go to Flesh Eater, and then we go with Children of the Living. I don't know why someone would want to torture themselves like this, but it's an option. Children of the Living Dead from 2001. So how I figure this one? Well, we get all the Heinzman stuff added to Night of the Living Dead. There you go. You get to follow him again in Flesh Eater. Where Children of the Living Dead starts is in the same Pittsburgh area in the 1980s with a second zombie outbreak that gets mentioned in Children of the Living Dead, and then it bumps to modern time. So I think this second zombie outbreak is the Flesh Eater movie. That's what I'm considering it. And then when we get to Children of the Living Dead, it's the aftermath, the end of that one, and what happens. What do you think? Do you like that one? That's okay. That's what we go with. So now we're going to move into one of my crazy and fun time ones. So this is the European copyright laws timeline. So George Romero had the rights to do whatever he wanted with Dawn of the Dead in the United States. Argento got the European license, so he recut the film and he used a lot more of the Goblin score for it, entitled it Zombie. And this is a huge hit around Europe and everything. Dawn of the Dead was a massive hit. I think it's the biggest of George Romero's zombie movies to date. So Lucio Fulci was making a zombie film already, I believe is the story, something like that. And mid-production, they decided to call it Zombie 2. And this is the craziest thing. I used to joke with my blog, Naptown Nerd. I would bring up Zombie. Lucio Fulci's Zombie. Z-O-M-B-I-E here in the U.S. The Dawn of the Dead title is Z-O-M-B-I. And I would say Zombie, parentheses, Zombie 2, Zombie Flesh Eaters, and other titles. I'm like, we'll get to it later. We'll talk about it someday. This is the day we're going to talk about it. So congrats, Naptown Nerd readers. If you're still with me to this day, you followed me through podcasting, YouTubing, and all this stuff. Here we go. All right. So Dawn of the Dead comes out. And immediately after, they put Zombie 2, Z-O-M-B-I 2, and then in other countries, Zombie Flesh Eaters, or just Zombie. I believe it was released in the United States first as Zombie 2, and it got corrected to Zombie later on. So that comes out in 1979. And then in 1988, they dust off Lucio Fulci to make Zombie 3, but also called Zombie 2, like Zombie Flesh Eaters 2, because depending on where you were, it might have been the second one or it might have been the third one you saw. So that one got made. Fulci didn't finish it. Claudio Fograsso finished it. He of Troll 2 fame, so you know his skills are there. So that one came out in 88, and then followed by Zombie 4, After Death from 1989, which was not made or intended to be zombie. It deals with voodoo. That's kind of the only link between the ones called Zombie after the George Romero one. The zombies look really different. They wear cloaks and stuff, and it's junky, late Saturday night, beer or joint in a movie, pizza, the zombies, all these deliver in gore effects and fun, though. I will give them all that. They're watchable. If you're a horror nut, especially the low grade and stuff, it's fine. And then we get to the wildest one, Zombie 5, Killing Birds from 1988. So we went from 89 back to 88. This movie was just called Killing Birds. In some place, it was called Raptors. And this doesn't really have zombies at all. And it's got Killing Birds. And it's just, why are we here but to tack on and sequelize? So in Europe, they had a law that allowed them to make a sequel to anything, even if they didn't have the rights to it. I have like Blu-rays of Alien 2 on Earth, which is Italian sequel to Alien. There is also, I have Terminator 2. I have Jaws 5. And the crazy thing, look up the Evil Dead timeline there in Europe, called La Casa. That's what Evil Dead was called there. There are like 9 La Casa movies that you probably watched one, didn't know about it. For this exercise, there was one way that Zombie, if you started with Fulci, there was a like Zombie 7 or something, or Zombie 9, and it was Anthropophagus, which is a Joe D'Amato film. Yeah, nothing to do with this, but we know it's Anthropophagus, but some country had it as a zombie. But I'm only going if you start, remember, with a George A. Romero film. So this is the zombie European copyright timelines. This is nuts. But in Italy, if you watched it, you only got 3. You got Dawn of the Dead, which was called Zombie, Zombie 2, which is Lucio Fulci's, and Zombie 3. And then in Germany, if you watched, you got Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and Zombie 3. So that's a wild way. And the funny thing with now in the United States with things, there is no Zombie 2. There is only, it goes Zombie 3, 4, 5. If you buy them on Blu-ray from one of your boutique labels, I have gotten things from 88 Films, Severn Films, and Vinegar Syndrome, which feels like the nice trifecta, and Blue Underground for Zombie. That's like the best wheelhouse of getting things from boutique labels to have these zombie films correct, like to have them from all different labels. So I really like that. Yeah. It's just so nutty to me, these ones. And that's where I kind of started this idea for it. And yeah, but that's not it. We got one more. We have the Day of the Dead timeline. So we have Day of the Dead. And then in 2005, there's a movie called Day of the Dead 2, Contagion. It's really bad, but it's got the title. It's got the font. All these people keep getting Day of the Dead. There's a Day of the Dead remake from 2008 that's got the font. There's the Day of the Dead Bloodlines from a few years ago. It's got the font, so you know it's official. And there's a TV series that went for 1 season that has it. So I don't know why Day of the Dead's easy to lend out, but there it is. So yeah, those are my timelines, my crazy timelines and ways to watch the George A. Romero zombie movies. Nutty, isn't it? And a lot of fun. I want to hear some of yours. And anywhere that these started with Dawn, obviously you could start with Night of the Living Dead if you wanted, but because Dawn got called Zombie and not like Night of the Living Dead or whatever they would translate to, I figured they meant Dawn, like zombie, as the start. So that's why I went with that one. I know I made a little like fun moves and stuff here, but I think they fit. So all in all, those are my timelines. Those are the ones. What's your preferred way of watching George A. Romero's zombie movies? But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it. I've been wanting to do it for a while. This felt like the time with the Day of the Dead commentary dropping tomorrow and Out Now with Aaron and Abe, which we had great Halloween specials for. You should check them out. Go back and look. We started with epic horror films, which is either in scale, scope, or story that we felt horror transcended to a big level. We did our favorite segments from the VHS franchise as one of them. We did we talked about Canadian horror. Every year we take 1 week and we dedicate it to doing horror from another country, which is always quite fun. And of course, I said the Day of the Dead commentary. I know I'm forgetting one, but go check them out. They're fun. You can go back to the previous years. It's one of my favorite things I do through the year. So, as always, I appreciate you watching my videos here when I do Blu-ray and 4K reviews and when you listen to the podcast. And do you want more videos like this with just me coming off with random stuff like this? I'd like to make more, so if you want them, I'll do them. We'll come up with some fun topics and we'll discuss in the comments. And yeah, so thank you for watching. And as always, stay film positive.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. Additional information on this and other episodes at brandonpetershow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at brandonpetershow.com. The show is available on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.